everyone. Welcome to Drawing with T. My name is Tina. Today I thought we'd draw something cute for summer. We've had a lot of heat waves, so I thought we'd draw something to stay cool. So how about a popsicle? So to start, we're going to go to the plus and create a new canvas. We're going to hit the plus up here, and I'm going to make my canvas 2500 pixels by 2500 pixels. Make sure you have pixels selected. And don't worry about the DPI, but I usually do like 300. And then hit create, and that'll bring up our canvas. So let's draw a sketch first. Usually I do my sketches in a medium gray. In the color wheel, you can double tap near pure white, medium gray, pure black, and it will snap to it to give you that pure color. So we're going to go into sketching, and you can really sketch with any pencil of your choice. I just use the Procreate pencil. So let's get some inspiration before we start. I'm going to pull up from the bottom and bring this up, and we're going to type in popsicles and images, and let's take a look at what we got. So I really like the popsicles that have these divots from the mold. I'm gonna choose this for my inspiration. I like the three colors. This is like a Neapolitan type popsicle. I mean, you could choose whatever you want. This is the one that I'm going to be inspired by today. So we're going to just draw our basic shape. It's kind of tapered at the top a little bit. And the bottom is a little drippy. And then we have these divots from the mold. And our popsicle stick. So I'm just going to resize this a little bit. Bring it up a little bit, center it a little bit more. And now what I do next is I usually block in the color. So we're going to go to layers, add a new layer, make sure our sketch is on top so we can see those sketch lines as we draw. And I have a palette created already called Popsicle. I'll put the numbers for the colors in the description if you want to use the same colors, but you're welcome to make your popsicle whatever flavor you'd like. So I'm going to start with this medium kind of pink on our color wheel for the main part of the popsicle. And for my brush, I'm going to go into inking and use syrup. And we're just going to define where our popsicle is actually going to be. And you can drop the color in. If you have made a closed shape, you can just drag your color right in and it will fill it for you. So now I kind of like it to be a little imperfect, so it looks like it's hand-drawn and not drawn by a computer. So sometimes these little wavy areas actually end up looking nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is color these divots from the mold. I'm going to choose a darker pink, slightly darker, a little more saturated, and we're going to put that on a new layer. So we're going to go to our layers, hit plus to create our new layer, and then still using the syrup brush, draw in these impressions from the popsicle mold. Now if you want to undo what you did, you can just double tap with 2 fingers. I got a mark down here. And that will erase what you did. So I am going to do the three flavors, and I have a little trick later on, you'll see, of how I'm going to do that. So we can go back with the eraser. It's a little easier to clean up anything that went over the top from our other color. Okay. The next thing we're gonna do is our block color for the stick. So we're gonna again put that on a new layer. And we are going to pick this orangey color, and we'll go in and it's kind of a wood color. Now we want to put this behind the popsicle. So if you bring up your layers, you can drag this down below and it will go beneath. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is some shading to bring this to life and add some dimension. The first layer I'm going to start with the shading is going to be the main popsicle, our second layer here. And we're going to start with, I like to start with the darker color, so we're going to pick this darker pink, kind of a mid-range. It's got a little red in it. And for the shading, we're going to go to airbrushing, soft brush. And I'm going to have my brush size about 10%. I'm full opacity. And we're just going to start adding, oops, totally forgot. So we want to put the shading on a new layer, and we want to be able to just shade the pixels we've already created. Now you can do that 2 ways. You can use Alpha Lock, which will lock this layer, and you can just draw on the pixels that are already there. Or we can do a clipping mask, which will do the same thing. It'll allow you just to draw on the pixels that are already there, but it will allow you to edit those additions that you're adding onto the layer. So we're going to do the clipping mask. So we're going to add a new layer, and we're going to select clipping mask. Sorry about that. Then we're going to go back in with our airbrush and add some shading around the bottom and the edges, kind of to give it some dimension here. I'm going to bring my brush size down a little bit and just add a little bit in here, a little bit more here. Now we're going to add a little bit of the highlights. So we're going to pick this really light pink. It's almost white, really light, not saturated at all. And again, with the soft brush, we're going to drop this down a little bit, maybe to 5%. And just where the light would kind of hit it at the peaks of these ridges. Just very subtle, but it really adds something. Okay, so we're going to go and add our shading now to these divots because they're really dark, and we just kind of want to add the light that's going to hit the center of those. So again, we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to create a clipping mask, and we're going to go back in, and I'm going to stay with this light pink and bring my brush size down to maybe 3. And just where the light would naturally hit this, And if we look at our inspiration, you can see the divots kind of fade away at the top a little bit, kind of. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to pick the medium pink and feather this in a little bit nicer. Now we can go back and forth between these two shading layers on the divots and the main popsicle body and just play with different lighting. I think maybe this would be brighter. It's kind of sticking out compared to the divot. And you can play with it until you get something that you are content with. And I think we can turn our sketching layer off now. We can go back to this layer and hit the check mark, and that takes away our sketch. So we have a nice popsicle with some shading. So now I'm going to show you how my little tip for giving us these other flavors. And instead of creating a whole new set of colors and going in and redoing highlights and whatnot, we're going to do a little trick. So we're going to select all of our popsicle layers, and you just slide to the right and you'll see all the not the stick, just the popsicle layers. And we are going to group them together, and we'll collapse them down. And then we're going to slide to the left and hit duplicate. So now we have two groups of all of our popsicle layers. Now we're going to take one of the groups and we're going to flatten it down. So we have a layer with all of our popsicle layers combined. So now what I can do is, while on this layer, I'm going to go to my selection tool here, and I'm going to select the bottom chunk of my popsicle here. And we're going to copy and paste this so that now we have another layer with just this bottom chunk of popsicle. And now we can change the colors of just this bottom part. So I am going to make the bottom chocolate. And how we can do that is we can select the magic wand and we can pick hue, saturation, brightness, and we can adjust our colors here. So we can play around, see how the colors just change for you? So you want to kind of go somewhere in here to get that chocolatey look. And you can also play with the saturation and the brightness, you know, how chocolatey is it going to be, until you're happy with your chocolate flavor. I think that looks good. And so now we have our bottom chunk. Now, I don't really like how stark this line is between the flavors. Usually you get some bleed through. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our magic wand. We're going to make sure we're on that chocolate bottom layer. Use our magic wand, or I'm sorry, first we need to use our selection tool and select just this line where the chocolate meets the strawberry. And then we're going to go to our magic wand and we're going to select motion blur. And we're just going to feather up, push up here, and you'll see that that line starts to feather. And it kind of blends into that strawberry, just like that. And I think that looks a little cooler. Okay, so we have our chocolate and we have our strawberry. So I'm gonna put my vanilla at the top. So we're gonna do what we did before. We're gonna go back to this main flattened popsicle layer, the pink, and we're gonna do what we did again. We're going to use our selection tool. This time we're gonna pick the top chunk of our popsicle. And we're going to copy and paste that. And if you go into your layers, you'll see that there is a new layer with just the top of the popsicle. So now we can adjust the color range for this. So we're gonna go into our magic wand and do the hue, saturation, brightness. And we can play with these until we get something that looks vanilla-y. And you gotta kind of just trial and error until it's a flavor that you like. And you can pick any flavors you want. I'm doing chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, like my inspiration picture. But you know, you can do, I mean, there's all kinds of fruit things and different things you can get inspired by, however, whatever popsicle you want to eat. So I think that looks pretty good for my vanilla. And now I'm going to go back in and we're going to do what we did before. We're going to make sure we're on that vanilla layer. And we're going to select this line here and choose our magic wand, motion blur, and we're going to just blend it down a little bit into the pink layer. And there we go. So we have our popsicle. Now we're going to work on our popsicle stick. So we're going to go down to the popsicle stick. We are going to kind of make it look a little more like wood. So I'm going to create a new layer and make it a clipping mask so I can add my texture on my stick here. And I'm going to choose for my brush, I'm going to go under painting and I'm going to select dry brush. Just kind of emulate some wood grain pattern, and I'm going to do it at like 10%. For my color, I'm going to pick this darker orangey wood color, and I'm just going to go in and very lightly start adding some wood grain streaks here. And you can go back in with the lighter color, a little less saturated, and same brush, add some more of these streaks to give the wood some depth. Okay, so cool. Now let's see. Let's give ourselves a background. I'm going to choose this tealy blue for my background. So you're going to open up your layers, you're going to hit background color, and I'm going to choose this tealy blue. I think it plays nice against the pink and the brown. Okay, so you know what, I think I want to add some more details to my popsicle. It's kind of a hot day today, so I think my popsicle might be a little drippy. So we're gonna go to that chocolate chunk of my popsicle because that's where it's gonna be dripping from. And I'm going to pick my brush. I'm going to go back to my syrup under inking. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. I'm going to use the color picker, and I'm gonna pick this color here that's right in the area where my drip's gonna be. And I'm just going to kind of draw in some drips. Okay. We'll go back in and we'll adjust the shading so it blends in a little bit better, but I'm just trying to get the shape that I like. Maybe there's a drip that kind of hit the ground here. Let's see. You can play with what kind of shape you'd like for your drip, how drippy it's gonna be. I think that's pretty good. So I am going to shade this. I'm not going to create a whole nother layer. I'm just going to stay on this layer, but I'm going to go back into airbrushing and pick my soft brush. And we are going to just kind of feather that in a little bit here. Oops. We don't want to bleed off of what we already drew. So I am going to swipe with 2 fingers to turn on alpha lock. So this will allow me to stay within the pixels, but it's going to keep everything on the same layer. And you'll know you're on alpha lock because you'll see the checkerboard behind your layer. You can also tap on this and select alpha lock that way. So we're gonna blend this so it's a little less distinct. And now we're gonna add some highlights to our chocolate drips. So I'm actually gonna use the color picker and pick this lighter color. So I think it's gonna be a little lighter here. And a little lighter at this point over here. This is going to be under the shadow of the popsicle, but maybe this is a little brighter. And I'm going to pick this darker color here to add a little more depth underneath here. Okay. I think I'm going to add some highlights. So I'm going to go back into inking and pick my syrup brush, and we're going to pick, let me see if this is going to be light enough. I'm going to make it a little lighter, a little less saturated. And our brush is at, let's do 5%, see how that looks. Just add little highlight here where the light catches it, make it look a little more liquidy. Okay. So I think that looks good. So now I'd like to do a shadow under the popsicle. So we are going to go into our layers. We're going to create a new layer, and we're going to drag that all the way down. It's going to be underneath everything. And I'm just going to choose, if I pick the background color, I'm going to snap it to a medium gray to start with here. And I'm going to go into airbrushing and pick the soft brush. Oops. Color is a little red. It's got a little too much red in it. I'm gonna make it a little darker. So where a shadow would be, that's better. Where a shadow would be. I know it seems really dark, but we're gonna change the opacity. I'm gonna actually make this brush size smaller, like 2%. Whoops. And there's gonna be a shadow here under this guy. Get a little bigger. Just kind of doing like an oval here. So now what we could do is go to our layer, click on this little N, and we can bring down the opacity. So it just kind of dulls it. We can also go back in, I think, with a black, darker color, and same soft brush, but we're gonna bring down our brush size to like 2%. Shadows are always darker right where the object touches. So we're just gonna darken up under where it's hitting. And we're gonna blur this a little bit so it looks more shadowy. So we're going to hit our magic wand and we're going to go to Gaussian blur. And we're going to drag it to the right and you'll see it'll start to get more fuzzy. I like it, but I've lost some of that darkness. I have added where the stick meets and the drip meet the table. So I'm gonna go back in with my soft brush and just add slightly darker color where it's hitting. Just like that. Okay. So I think this is like kind of a little boring. I think we can get rid of our inspiration. Let's make this popsicle alive. Let's add a face and some arms and make it more fun. So I'm going to go into layers, add a new layer. This face is going to be on top of everything. And let's make this guy cool. Let's give him some sunglasses. I'm going to go into inking and pick syrup. And right in the pink area, let's draw some sunglasses. I'm going to add some highlights to that. I'm going to turn on the alpha lock. Again, 2 fingers, swipe to the right, and you'll see the checkerboard. And let's add some highlights. So I'm going to pick this really bright light pink here. And do kind of a big one, and then a nice little one. If you draw a line and you hold down, it will snap the line straight. That looks kind of cool. So instead of redrawing a whole nother lens, I'm just going to duplicate this. So swipe to the left, duplicate, and we have a whole new thing. So then we can just hit the arrow to move it over. Ba-ba-da-ba. And we got a whole nother lens. And if I have magnetics on, you can turn that off and it won't snap like that. Then you have more freedom to move it where you think it should go. Okay. All right, this is looking cooler. So I'm going to merge these 2 layers. They don't need to be on separate layers. So I'm going to hit merge down, and that's going to make it on the same layer. I'm going to turn off alpha lock because I need to make some frames for these glasses. So I'm going to go back to the black, and I still have this syrup brush. And I'm just going to, let's see how big my brush is. I'm like 6%, let's try that out. I'm just going to connect them the top here, like that, and add in our frame. Oops. Now I'm going to put on the alpha lock so I can stay within. I don't have to worry about bleeding onto my popsicle. Okay. So let's give him a smile. And we can keep doing that on this layer, but we have to turn alpha lock. We'll just put his whole face on this layer. And let's give him a smile. That's a little too thick. So let's drop this down to like 2%. Let's try 5. All right, that looks pretty good. So let's give him some arms now. And I kind of want to give him a little attitude. So maybe he's got one of his arms. Let's make this a little thicker. Try 9. Maybe he's got one of his arms on his hip, or well, whatever you want to call it. Just keep it simple. Maybe his other arm is up in the air. Like, hey. Just kind of thicken these up a little bit. Okay. So what I would like to do is go back in and add some shading under the glasses and his arms. So we're going to go and we're going to shade our pink area first. So that's going to be on this layer where we have our complete pink popsicle. And I'm going to do airbrushing, my soft brush, and we're going to pick this. We'll start with this medium pink and see how that looks. And we're just gonna go under the glass here. Just add a little bit, maybe under his smile a little bit. Let's make this a little smaller, like 1%. Just to give it some dimension. And you'd see some shadow. Oops. Let's turn on alpha lock for this so we don't go off the edge. You'd see some shadow here, and you'd see some shadow here. Okay, so we also need to shade down here in our chocolate layer. So we're going to go into our chocolate layer. I'm going to use the color picker and pick this kind of darker brown here. And we'll just add a little bit like that. We also need to shade our stick. So let's go onto the layer that we put the wood grain on, the clipping mask of the stick. And let's pick this darker color here. And we have the soft brush. And we're gonna kind of do, let's make this a little bigger, like a triangular shaped shadow. And I'm gonna just go a little bit darker, a little bit more saturated right underneath. Maybe drop down my size so I can really get in there. So it pops a little bit more. That's good. Let me feather that out a little bit. So that's looking pretty good. I think I want to add some text. So I'm going to write up here, how about stay cool? Since that's what we're trying to do. So I need to kind of shrink him down. So I have to pick everything. Oops. So you're just gonna slide to the right. Make sure you've got all your layers. You don't need to select your sketch layer. And then we're going to resize this guy, center him up so I have enough room, and we can adjust this again. And I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to do some text. We're going to pick pure white, and let's pick a fun brush to write our text. I'm going to go into inking, and let's pick thylacine, if I'm saying that right. Okay, so I'm going to write stay. I'm getting a little too big. And you know, I kind of like it a little misshapen. Just gives it something. I'm gonna move this guy a little bit over. So I want to add a little more interest to the text. So we're going to go into layers, add a new layer, and we'll do kind of a gradient thing. I really like how this pink looks against this background color, so we'll feather in some of this pink. We'll start with, let's pick this medium pink. And we'll go back to airbrushing and our soft brush, and we'll put it at like 10%. Oops, forgot. We want to make this a clipping mask so we stay on the pixels of the text. And we're just going to start shading up from the bottom, just like that, like halfway. And then I think I want to just make it a little darker at the bottom. Let's pick this slightly darker pink. And again, we're going to do the same thing, just up from the bottom, and just till we hit the bottom of those letters. So we got a nice gradient there. And you could pick a different brush if you don't like how this one looks. There's a lot of cool calligraphy brushes. I'm not very good at calligraphy, but you know, this is what I chose to do, but you can make it your own. And I think that looks pretty good. So let's call this drawing finished. I hope you enjoyed hanging out and doing this summer drawing with me. And I hope you learned something and I was able to give you some tips that maybe you didn't already know. So I hope you join me next time. Bye.